Hello, my name is Aviva, and today I'm going to be reacting to your basic book opinions. I asked all of my followers on Instagram to send me in some thoughts, and you guys definitely came through. To everybody who did send something in, thank you so much for helping me get content to make this video. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, I do things like this all the time in my story. So if you want to be a part of these type of videos, then make sure to follow me. I'll have my link to my profile down below. But today I'm just going to be going through, anything that you guys sent in. I'm not going to get to all of them because there were way too many, but I am going to try to get to as many as I can before I get tired of doing this. So the first one I wanted to touch upon was Throne of Glass is better than ACOTAR, and I happen to agree with that, mostly because I think that the entire Throne of Glass series as a whole is better than the entire ACOTAR series as a whole. Like, I've enjoyed every single book in the Throne of Glass series. Like, I can reread that series forever. There's 8 books. It's a completed series, and from beginning to end, I thoroughly enjoyed the story. I do have books that are like more favorite than others, but at the end of the day, like, I thoroughly loved every single one of them. And with ACOTAR, I don't feel the same way. Like, when I think of ACOTAR, I'm thinking of ACOMAF. Like, I am reading that series because I just want to fully enjoy A Court of Mist and Fury. Like, I did like ACOTAR for what it was at the time, and like, I still will read that. Like, I'll reread it because I want to, fully enjoy A Court of Mist and Fury for what it was. But then after, like, A Court of Mist and Fury is over, I don't really care that much. Like, ACOWAR, like, I'm not the hugest fan of war books, and I just feel like A Court of Mist and Fury was so much better than ACOWAR. And then all the books that came after that, like A Court of Silver Flames, like, I kind of wish that ACOTAR had ended at ACOWAR. Like, that's my personal opinion. Like, Nessa and Cassian, like, they were good, but like, I had a lot of problems with that book as well. So like, I just feel like, I don't have as much to complain about with the Throne of Glass series as I do with the ACOTAR series. So therefore, I 100% think that Throne of Glass is way better than ACOTAR. I love both series, but Throne of Glass is my personal favorite. Next, somebody said that Grumpy Sunshine is the very best, and happens to be at this very moment. I 100% agree with you. I feel like I go through like phases of tropes. Like, at certain times, this trope is my favorite, and then I move on and this trope is my favorite. And at the moment that I'm making this video, Grumpy Sunshine is my favorite, and I don't know when that feeling is gonna pass. I actually recently made a Grumpy Sunshine rec video, so if you wanted to, check out all of my favorite Grumpy Sunshine books, I'll make sure that that's linked down below. But I feel like I personally very much connect to Grumpy Sunshine because in my personal relationship with my husband, I'm the grump and he is the sunshine. So I feel like I always like very much connect to the dynamic that's going on in the book. And therefore, I absolutely love it. I die for it. I think that it's just like, an opposites attract sort of thing. Like, oh, this person feels this way, and then this person is like so the opposite, and yet it bothers them, and yet somehow they're always like, drawn to it. I just love the dynamics of Grumpy Sunshine. And at the moment, I 100% agree with you that it is the very best trope. And then it's pretty funny because I had a few comments where people said enemies to lovers trope is overrated, and then enemies to lovers trope, when done well, is the best trope, period. So obviously that's very like opposite feelings. And the thing is, I kind of agree. I agree with both. I do think that the enemies to lovers trope is overrated, mostly because it's often not done well. But when it is done well, it could be really good, mostly because I feel like it has this kind of similar dynamics to the Grumpy Sunshine trope of like, people who don't get along, they just build such angst and tension. Like, there's just so much going on in the story when like people are like clashing in one way or another. So I feel like when it is done well and the enemies have a reason to be enemies, when they have a reason to not get along other than like a stupid reasoning that like I do see often in a book, then I feel like, it could be really, really good. But I do think that it's overrated, mostly because often it's not done well. Like, usually when you read an enemies to lovers book, at least the books that I've read, it always ends up being like, oh, the guy really loved her this whole time, and he was just being that way because for whatever reason. And then I'm just like, okay, it was good because I enjoyed like the stuff that came with the enemies to lovers trope. Like, I like the dynamics that it brings, except usually it doesn't end up panning out to be a true enemies to lovers. So I do think if it's done right, then it's really good. But I do also think that yes, it is overrated, mostly because often it isn't done that well. And then while we're on the topic of tropes, I saw a lot of people say that like like they absolutely hate the miscommunication trope. And I happen to very much agree with you. I hate when miscommunication is basically the like whole reasoning for the drama in the book. Like if the only reason why these couples are fighting or when they break up at the end or something along those lines is because of miscommunication, I absolutely hate it. Like if there is like, a very short instance of miscommunication, I can handle it and I won't complain about it. But if the entire book, it's just like one thing over the other of like miscommunication, then I really do hate it. I don't think that that's a good basis for drama in a book. Like I can't even begin to explain it how much it bothers me, because I just think it's stupid. Like if you are going to try and make drama in a book, make it like serious. Don't make it like, oh well, they didn't talk to each other, or it's a miscommunication, so that is why we're like fighting in the book. Like I think it's stupid. And yes, I agree with a lot of people who said that miscommunication can die. Okay, so this next one is really funny because a lot of people said that cartoon covers are a turnoff, or they hate people on covers, and then the characters on covers should look like the characters in the books. And it's pretty funny because for a very long time, I mean, everybody's taste change. Everybody develops in the way that they read and like what interests them. And for a very long time, I did enjoy like cartoon characters on covers. So like I used to like that, and I used to hate when there were like real men on covers. Like I used to not be able to pick up a book if there was a real man on a cover. For some reason, I didn't want to get into it. And then there was like some sort of turning point over this past year where all of a sudden I really hated cartoon covers on books. Like I find it so odd. Like, it's like, it looks like it's like, a sweet little cute book. And then sometimes you just don't know what you're getting into on the inside. Sometimes it does feel that way on the inside, like very vanilla rom-com, very fade to blacky. But then sometimes you have like the kiss quotient where it's like, it's a super steamy book hiding behind like a cartoon cover. And I feel like it is very misleading sometimes. And also like, I don't know, I've kind of grown out of the vibe of cartoon covers, and I've kind of grown into the vibe of naked men on covers. And it's funny because I used to not like naked men on covers, even though I was getting into the books, but now I weirdly enjoy it. Like I really don't mind when there's like a real person on the cover. Like I always wish that somehow there was like no person on the cover. Like I'm not a fan of people on covers in general because I usually think that they don't fully fit the character that's in the book. Like if you get a perfect model to fit the person that is like you're talking about in the book that it's representing, then I think good for you, you did that well. But I find so often that the guy that's on the cover like has the wrong color hair, or he has tattoos when he's not supposed to have tattoos, or he doesn't have the piercing that they said they had, or something along those lines. And I'm just like, well then why did you choose that guy on the cover? Like it makes absolutely no sense. And then it bothers me. So in general, I would go with like no people on covers and not a cartoon cover. But at the same time, like I see all sides of it because I've gone through phases, and I feel like I've touched upon like every single phase where it's like at one point I liked it and at one point I hated it. So I'm sure that in the future, like my taste in covers will change again. But at the moment, I feel like I'm somewhat kind of up for grabs. I'll take whatever, I rather read good plot than good smut. And I 100% agree with that. I feel like I've even said it before. Like while I do very much enjoy a smutty book, I don't like it if it doesn't have a good plot, a good development, a good build up to the relationship. Like I'm here for the relationship. Like if you give me a book that has the perfect romance in the entire world and not one sex scene, I won't complain. I won't be like, well, where was the smut? Like I don't necessarily care for that, but I do think that it does enhance the story when it's done well. But if like the entire book is just smut and it's like there's hardly any develop in the relationship, then I really don't care for the smut. I'll literally skip over it. So I feel like like I need a perfect balance, and I feel like everybody's taste where it comes to like what balance do they want is different. And that's why books are so good, because like everybody has their own taste, and something will work for one person and something won't work for the other person. But in my personal opinion, I would rather a better plot than more smut. Like give me more plot, more build up, more tension, everything along the lines of like their actual relationship, like then their time in the bedroom. You know what I mean? Slow burn all the way, MZ style, Mariana Zapata style. And oh my God, do I agree with that. I feel like every time I read a Mariana Zapata book, like everything after that feels not slow burn enough. And like, I'm always like, oh, they did that way too quickly, And it's like, well, you know what? You had a 700-page Mariana Zapata book. You're comparing to a 300-page not Mariana Zapata book. So how could it have been so slow? But after reading Mariana Zapata, I do realize that like, nothing has to happen too quickly. Like calm down. Let's not let the kiss happen till know, like, I mean, obviously every book is different, but like if it happens within the first 50 pages, I'm like, that was way too quick. You did not build that up quick enough. So I have a very good appreciation for slow burn. And I do wish sometimes that some books were a little bit slower in getting to the point, because I feel like the best part of a relationship is the build up to it. So when you do that too quickly, I'm just like, ugh. Paperbacks are better. I personally agree with that. I very much like reading through a paperback. Like, hardbacks are fun, and I do think that they're much nicer, but at the end of the day, like, they're so much heavier, and I don't know, I'm not a huge fan. Like, I'll always have to take the dust jacket off of it because I'm scared to ruin it, and then I don't know, I just don't enjoy like holding a hardback as much as I enjoy holding a paperback. So I thoroughly do enjoy reading through paperbacks more, but I do love the appearance of a hardcover, if that makes sense. Somebody else also said dog-earing pages is efficient. And the thing is, for a very long time, I was so OCD about my books of like, oh my God, I can't dog ear. I can't do anything along those lines. Like, I don't even want to annotate, not just because of like OCDness, but I don't want to annotate for other reasons. But dog earing specifically is something that I have slowly grown into. And I know, oh my God, everybody's going to like freak out, be like, how can you dog ear your pages? But I do find it very efficient. Like, sometimes, especially when I'm vlogging and I want to like remember to point something out, because I don't annotate, I find it very convenient to just like dog ear the page so that I could like come back to it later and share with you like everything that I wanted to share with you. So I do find it very efficient, and it has started to bother me much less, even though, you know, like, oh, it's like, oh, you're ruining your book. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's my book. Like, make it look used. Let's make it look like I read it. You know what I mean? So I kind of see both sides. Like, I get the people who dog ear, but also I was once those person who like screamed at people for dog earing. So I see both sides. I don't like third person. I don't either. It actually very often ruins the book for me. I used to be able to read it. Like, there's some books where it's like, I'll come back and I'll try to do a reread of it, and then I realize it was third person. I'm like, how the hell did I get through this book? Like, I guess I used to not realize it, but now that I've read so many like first person POVs, third person, I can hardly get through. It does hurt my mind. So I 100% agree with, you know, not liking third person. Somebody else also said like short chapters are better than long chapters, and I have to very much agree with that. I just read this book called Sweet Dandelion, and it was like a 600 long page book, and I was like, that is very long. Like, it definitely could have been shortened, but one thing that actually got me through the book was how short the chapters was. Like, I so noticed how short they were, and that's why I didn't end up skimming the book very often. Like, because it was so short, I just was like, okay, let's just get to the next chapter. Like, it's only like a page and a half away, and I very much appreciate short chapters. When you have long chapters, it's harder to put the book down, and I like the vibe of short chapters. So I 100% agree with that. I mean, I don't get long chapters, but I was going to say like, oh, I get the people who like long chapters, but to be very honest with you, I don't really get it, because like, I just don't see the point in them. Like, just split it up. Like, if I remember reading this book called, I think it was A Deadly Education, that had very long chapters, and I'm just like, I need a freaking break. Like, this is way too long. Like, just pause for a second so that I could pause. You know what I mean? So I take it back with like almost saying that, oh, I get people who like long chapters. I don't get it. Somebody else said ebooks are 100% more convenient, but nothing beats the feeling of an actual book. And then somebody else also said people who don't like ebooks have never used a reader because they are delightful. So happens to be, I don't read ebooks, and it is because of what somebody said of, you know, they've never used it to know. So to be very honest with you, like, I've thought about it very often, and I'm not like ready to like delve into that. I love getting a physical book. Like, I'm just like, I mean, I understand how like ebooks are extremely efficient, and like when you can't afford to buy physical books, like it is so freaking convenient and it's amazing. And I feel like if I did get an ebook, I would be able to get myself into it. But to be very honest with you, I've never tried it, and I just like getting physical books so much that I don't have like a plan of trying it anytime soon. Like, if I want to read a book, I'm just going to buy it physically. And one day maybe I will try e-readers, but at the moment I can't say if, you know, they are good or not, because I've never tried them before to know. I'm not against them. I've just never really tried them, so I don't have like a perfect opinion on it. Never separate a series on a bookshelf. So I happen to very much agree with this. And it's funny because I see a lot of people who they'll like color coordinate their entire shelves. And then I'm like, how do you do it? Like, I don't, like, my OCD doesn't understand the reasoning for separating series. And that's why I have my library with, you know, I have my series like together like this. And then I have my, you know, rainbow shelf over there with all of my standalones. Like, I feel like that makes a lot more sense. You know, like if you want a rainbow the books that are able to be rainbow, but like why split up your series? It does very much bother my OCD, so I understand it. I also do understand like the aesthetic of like rainbowing your shelf, but I feel like it's more important to keep your series together than to rainbow. But that's my personal opinion. Like, it's your library, you can do whatever you want to it. But at the end of the day, I don't understand the reasoning for pulling a series apart. Like, this series, it's one story, it just split up into 3 different books, and even though it has different colors on the cover, like, keep them together. That's where they're supposed to be, you know? Love triangles are overrated. They give me freaking anxiety. And it happens to be, I agree with you on the anxiety part. They do give me anxiety as well. The thing is I don't know if they're necessarily overrated or not. Like, I personally have not read a lot of love triangle books. I feel like you see it often in, like, let's say YA fantasy series. Like, for some reason, there's like love triangles in that sort of book often. Like, I know the Kiss of Deception series has love triangle, and I know that the Clockwork Prince series has love triangle. And when I had read those, like, you know, way back when, I did enjoy it in the moment, but that was only because like I was just getting into the idea of love triangles. Like, those were the first 2 books that I read with love triangles. Like, I can't even think of any other books that had that dynamic. And when I read those, I didn't necessarily like remember not enjoying like the story, because I thought that it did give it like interesting, like, oh, there were 2 guys after one girl. It was so much fun. But then like looking back at it, I feel like if I did reread those series, I would get more anxiety than I did when I read them originally, because I no longer like the idea of a love triangle. Like, I thought that it was okay, but now I don't like it anymore, mostly because I read The Heir by Sophie Lark, which was a love triangle book. It's the first book in the Kingmaker series, and I remember getting so much anxiety from that. Like, I very much did not like that book because of how much anxiety the love triangle brought into it for me. And obviously there was so much more going on than, like, you know, just the idea of the love triangle. Like, the way that it all happened is what gave me anxiety. But my point is that I don't like love triangles, and I don't know if it necessarily is an overrated thing, because I don't see them often enough, but I don't like them. So yeah. So a lot of people had said that audiobooks are still considered reading. And it's pretty funny because I've never personally come across like a comment where people said like an audiobook isn't considered reading, but I've actually heard a lot of people say stuff along those lines of like audiobooks are considered reading, which is like, well, are you saying that because people are saying that they're not considered reading? Like, I've never personally seen that, but I have personally seen a lot of like YouTubers where they'll say that they won't mention if they read a book through audio or not, because they don't want people to come after them being like, well, then you didn't really read it. And I don't personally get that. Like, I do think that yes, when you're reading an audiobook, you do like, you know, bring in the story to your brain in a different way. And you won't necessarily pick up on everything, because, you know, you could zone out for a second and the story kept going and therefore you missed something. Like, but like everybody's different. Everybody brings stories into their head in a different way. And maybe you can just, you know, how do you say it? Like, you know, absorb an audiobook better than you absorb reading a physical book. Who knows how you know, process things. But for me personally, I mean, I don't process audiobooks as well as I do when I physically read them, because I will zone out or I'll listen to them a little bit quicker and then like I'll just miss something. And that's actually why, even though I've only started to get into audiobooks, I haven't like delved into every genre in audiobooks yet. Like, I've never listened to a romance audiobook yet, mostly because I think that I need to like read a romance. Like, I want to pick up on the small things in a romance. I want to pick up on the looks and the small touches and the things that they say. And I don't want to miss any of that, because that's what's most important for me in a romance. So if I read it through audio, I feel like I'll miss it a little bit and it won't hit me as hard. But like lately I've been like reading audiobooks with like, you know, adventure stories. Like, I've listened to all of the Percy Jacksons and the Miss Peregrine books. And I feel like because those are more of like, you know, a full adventure where like there's a lot of characters and things along those lines, I feel like I actually enjoy the story more through audio, because the audio is more entertaining than me trying to like, you know, flip through a multiple perspective book that's all action packed, where I'm gonna not enjoy it as much if I'm spending the time reading it. So through audio, I actually enjoy it a lot more. So I feel like it just depends on like, you know, like it depends on like, you know, so many factors. But at the end of the day, I 100% think that if you read a book through audio, it's still 100% reading. Like, you're still absorbing the book one way or another. So in what world can it not be considered reading? You know what I mean? So somebody said, info dumping is lazy writing. Build your world with the story. Don't just monologue it. And I happen to agree with that, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think it's lazy writing. I think that there's just an art form to building a world, specifically like a fantasy world, and not that it's necessarily lazy to like, set it up in a certain way where it feels very info dumpy, but sometimes like, people just do it better than others. Like specifically, I read the From Blood and Ash series recently, and the way that we learned about that world was with the character asking a lot of questions and then people discussing it and then more questions, and then like it was very monologue-ish the way that we did learn about that world. And I very much didn't like it, but it was also like a style. And the thing is, I don't think a lot of people enjoyed that book, like the way that we got the info dumping. Like it was very info heavy, and the way that it went about it, like I didn't necessarily like it. But I don't think that it's necessarily lazy. I think that it's just like you either have a specific talent for building a world in a seamless way or you don't. So you either have to info dump it or you somehow can make it really seamless. And some authors just have it, some authors just don't. So somebody said that rom-coms shouldn't be called spicy when there's usually one spice scene. They're cute, not spicy. And I happen to agree with that because, like I recently read The Love Hypothesis. Not recently, I read it a while ago, and I've talked about this many times on my channel, but I had thought that The Love Hypothesis was going to be steamier than it was because so many people were calling it like a really spicy rom-com. And then we got one sex scene, and I'm just like, what were you talking about? Like, did we read the same book? And then I kind of realized that at the end of the day, everybody has a different personal spice level. Like I might have read this book and I think that it is like the spiciest book I've ever read. And then somebody else could have read it and been like, well, I have read a lot more spicier books than that. So therefore we don't have the same spice rating. And I feel like therefore it really depends on like what you have read in the past. So everybody does have like a different level of what they think spice is. So for some people, they'll read a regular rom-com and they'll get like 1.5 spicy scenes and they'll be like, oh my God, this was so spicy because I've never read anything like this. So therefore they're saying about like, oh, how hot and bothered they got about the book. But then other people who are into like dark, taboo, weird romances, not weird, I love those type of romances. They're not weird. Everybody can read whatever they want and it's fine. But you know what I meant. And when you read those type of books and then you go and read a rom-com, obviously that's not going to hit the same way as it hits somebody who doesn't read your type of book. So, it's kind of hard to like, give spice ratings out, but I feel like if you are going to take somebody's spice rating for what it is, you have to know their personal taste in books and what they have read in the past, to therefore understand their spice rating, if that makes sense. And that's something that I've only recently learned. Like, it slowly has grown on me, this idea of like, well, you say that it is this spice rating, but we just have different spice ratings. You know what I mean? And that's totally okay. But, you got to do your own research before you go into a book thinking that it's going to be a specific type of spice or not. You know what I mean? But anyway, with that said, I'm going to, wrap this up. So the last thing that I'm going to, comment on is that somebody said nobody should be shamed for what they choose to read. And I 100% agree with that. Like, at the end of the day, we're reading for fun. And, you want to enjoy what you're reading. And nobody should shame you for, reading something that they don't personally like. If you like steamy romances and you're embarrassed to read them because you think that somebody's going to make fun of you, don't be. You're allowed to read whatever you want. If you don't want to like scream into the world, then don't scream into the world. But at the end of the day, like if that's what you enjoy, then that's what you enjoy. If you like reading nonfictions and biographies, good for you. We don't have to agree on what a good book is or not to still enjoy the fact that we're all reading and really enjoying it. So you should never be shamed into what you're reading. I think that anybody who's doing that is just a hater and you should ignore them. So hopefully you never get, shamed for reading what you want to read. So with that said, that's all I'm going to go through. There were so many more to go through, but I'm kind of getting like, I feel like we've done enough. So leave a comment down below with what you thought about all of my answers. And if you enjoyed watching this, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not currently subscribed. And thank you so much for watching. And until next time, enjoy reading.